Morning, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome back. At least welcome back to my masterclass. Been gone for a couple weeks. One for the holiday last week. Hope you had a good time off. Hope if you're in the U.S., hope you enjoyed your holiday. If you took time off and you're somewhere else, hope you enjoyed that time off as well. For those of you who are new, first timers, welcome to Masterclass Friday. This is the one day a week where, excuse me, you start talking first thing in the morning and you realize you can't talk first thing in the morning. Anyway, uh, this is the day of the week where the Adobe evangelists get to share their various disciplines for a little bit, close to an hour, a little bit under an hour with you. So we have photography, we have Photoshop, we have graphic design, we have UI, UX design, we have uh, video and audio, as well as digital painting and drawing. So you get a whole week of, um, whole day of masterclasses. In between those masterclasses are sprinkled in some creative challenges. So right after me, for example, there will be a Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge, and you guys can participate in that as well. For those of you who are watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay. This is live. Mine is live every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern, like I'm here in the U.S. And I see folks coming in on various channels. So I see Angela over there on YouTube, and I see Andy on YouTube as well. And I see someone on Facebook. I'm not going to try and pronounce that name. I'll screw it up because I'm bad with names. But anyway, welcome everyone that's coming in from the various channels. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, that's cool. You can hang out there. But if you really want to participate in the main chat, because I won't always get a chance to look at both chats and do the work as well, head over to b.net/Adobe Live. That's the main chat I'll be looking at. If I see your question and I happen to look up and see it, I'll of course answer it in the other chat. But it's hard to maintain multiple chats while I'm also doing demos and showing you and teaching you stuff. So with that said, if you do head over to b.net/Adobe Live, you can always sign in with your free Adobe ID. You can even use your social media accounts to sign in with that Adobe ID as well. So you don't have to pay anything to do that. Now let's get on with today's topic. Today's topic, we're going to be doing something that I haven't done in a long time because let me explain. So portrait retouching. I'm a portrait photographer, so of course I do a lot of portrait retouching, and most of that retouching happens in Photoshop. I'll do as much as I can in Lightroom or Lightroom Classic first, but then inevitably I'm going to head over to Photoshop because there's just things I can either do in Photoshop that I can't do in Lightroom, or there are things I can do in Photoshop that are easier or faster to do in Lightroom. The first time I attempted portrait retouching is, I believe, when they introduced the adjustment brush and the non-circular spot healing tool. Because then I was able to kind of remove things, and I could use the adjustment brush to kind of brush away certain things. And that was as far as I could go. I could do all the global adjustments. I could do, linear gradient, radial gradient, and the adjustment brush. That was about it. And then, of course, last year we introduced the new masking, where we got select subject and select sky. And that helps a little, where you can select the person. But then it was just, whatever you did, you had to do it to the entire person or the entire background, or brush it in. And now, of course, with the new people masking introduced this year, I was like, well, maybe it's time to take another look at portrait retouching again. Now that I got so many different ways of isolating a person's face or skin or eyes or whatever, I can do more tweaks faster and easier, and more importantly, non-destructively in Lightroom Classic. Now, speaking of which, I'm going to be doing this all in Lightroom Classic today. Most of what I'm going to be showing you, you can do in Lightroom as well. Like the masking's all there, the adjustments are all there, the same sliders are there, but there's one big difference in Lightroom Classic for the portrait retouching part that's not in Lightroom, at least not that I can tell. And that is, in Lightroom Classic, well, both programs have presets. You can do presets for the develop module or editing. But in Lightroom Classic, the adjustment brush has its own separate presets. And to the best of my knowledge, Lightroom doesn't have that. It doesn't have separate presets just for the brush. So years ago, I downloaded or bought a set of presets for my adjustment brush so I could paint in, and they're all based on portrait retouching. And so I'm going to be showing you some of those because I can in Lightroom Classic and I can't show them in Lightroom. So aside from that, everything I'm going to show you, if you're a Lightroom user or even a mobile user, for the most part, you can do. And I'll talk about the masking on mobile as well. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to kill that banner, and let's go ahead and pop over to my computer where I've got assortment of faces, some of which you've seen before, some of which you've seen me shoot before. You were... Hold on. Apparently I triggered her, and my digital assistant's like answering a question I didn't ask. Alexa, or computer, pause. All right, and no, there is nothing else I'd like to know, at least not right now. Thank you. I'm going to unplug it in a second. All right, I'll tell you what. Good. This is hilarious. What else would you like to know? Nothing. Thank you for using WebMD. Goodbye. Goodbye. Apparently I asked the WebMD question, didn't know it. Anyway, so I literally was about to yank the plug. I was like, let's see if it'll shut up on its own. And we've all been there if you have a digital assistant in your house, because they're always listening and they don't always catch the keyword they're supposed to. Sometimes they think you said it and you really didn't. All right, with that said, moving right along. So like I said, some of these faces you've actually seen me shoot. You were there for my live shoots in the master classes. Let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to just start with a simple thing with the new masking that would have taken a lot longer before. And then we'll kind of do some of these are just basic one-offs. Some of these are retouching the whole portrait, and we'll just see how far we get. There's no set, like I don't have to get through all of these. There's no set time limit other than we have a hard stop at the top of the hour, but let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so let's start with this first one. This is Stacy, and I'm gonna go ahead and do the things I would normally do. I think I reset this photo back to its defaults. Yep, so it doesn't have anything applied to it. Well, hang on, let's reset it. Oh, it does have one profile applied. Let's go ahead and switch the profile. We'll switch it to camera portrait. We'll go ahead and also do an auto tone, and then we'll do some white balance adjusting there, and we'll bump up the contrast a bit, and I'll drop down the vibrance, and I'll drop down the saturation. Okay, that's kind of a good starting place. I do more to this overall, but we're really not here to do the overall stuff. I'm really just here to show you one particular thing on this photo. So in this particular photo, and I went back and looked at other photos from this shoot, she's got these red hairpins in, but she's got on purple lipstick. And later on, she must have noticed it, because I don't remember this, and she switched it to red. So other shots of her that I have on the same day, she does have the red lipstick that she put on. But in this shot, let's say this is the one I really want to use, it doesn't have the red lipstick, so let's go ahead and take care of that right here in Lightroom. So let's head over to the masking, and let's, and again, it will look for people right off the bat, so it found the first person. And if I wanted to just select the person, great, done. I could just click and select the person, entire person, and I can create a mask. But I don't want the entire person, I just want the lips. So you can either, and I've shown this before, you can either check off one mask that you want to create. You can check off multiple masks. So if I wanted face skin as well, and when I check multiple masks, I can either create two separate masks just to save time, or I can uncheck that and combine them into one. It's your choice. Lightroom's interface is a little different, but it achieves the same thing. But I don't want face skin, I just want the lips. So let's go ahead and create that mask. All right, so now that we got that mask created, now you're seeing kind of a red color, but that's just the mask. That's not the actual color of the masked area. It's just an overlay that happens to be the color we're kind of aiming towards. But let's go ahead and now I'm going to do this in I'm going to use 2 to 3 different things for this. First, I'm going to go to color. I'm going to actually go pick a red. Okay, so now we're not seeing the mask anymore. We're actually seeing the colors that I'm just hovering around or dragging around in to kind of get the colors I want. So if I want bright colors, I stay near the top. If I want dark colors or just subdued colors, I'll go near the bottom. So I want a nice bright red. But when I go up to the brightest red I can get, it's not quite red. It's close, but it's more of a pinkish red, like a hot pink, and that's not the color I want. So I don't have any more choices. Like I'm on red, that's as good as I can get in this panel. That's why we move on to the next area. So the next area, okay, I got the color red I want, but that's not quite the color I want because it's blending in with the purple that was already there. So then we go to the local hue, and in local hue, I can make it more red. I can actually drag it towards the red that I want, or any other color for that matter. I'm going to drag it more towards the red that I want, and we're getting there. We're almost there. And then last but not least, keep in mind, you have adjustments not just for color, you have adjustments for all the other areas that you would normally adjust. So if you wanted to make it darker, you can just bring the exposure down or make the exposure brighter. So you can control kind of the color that way as well. You have your contrast. So if you wanted to do that, you can adjust the contrast. So you can keep tweaking other sliders until you get the exact kind of tone you're looking for. So I'm gonna make it a little brighter with exposure and a little more contrast, but not, I went negative on the contrast, but not so negative. And again, I can adjust the highlights and kind of just dial in the red that I'm looking for. And that's kind of pretty close because I noticed these they're kind of pinkish as well. And that's really what we're aiming towards. So again, that was before, that was after. So before, after. So someone's asking, what kind of program is this? Lightroom Classic is a photographer's tool by Adobe for managing your photos and also doing non-destructive editing. But its main job is managing, although it does have some editing. And this is why Photoshop users are always asking, well, what do I need Lightroom for? Because Photoshop users know they can edit anything they want whenever they want. But Photoshop doesn't do the management part. Same thing, if I were a Lightroom user, why would I need Photoshop? I can do editing here because it doesn't do all the editing that Photoshop can do. So that's why there are two programs and probably will be for the foreseeable future. All right, you're welcome. Oh, you're not thanking me. Okay, you're thanking Sean or Sam. All right, so anyway, yeah, this is Lightroom Classic specifically. All right, so that was just a quick, easy adjustment to adjust the color of the lips because I could quickly adjust the lips. Now, think about this. Prior to this lips mask, I would have to grab the adjustment brush, zoom in, and carefully paint the lips first. Not go over, not go under, get all the lips, just paint it perfectly, and then make the same adjustment. So with one click of a mask, I was able to make that selection just that easily. Why not use the eyedropper? Why not use the dropper to go sample one of the pins? All right, so what they're asking is why not come, because you don't have an eyedropper once you leave this box. So that's one reason. And same thing for local hue. You don't have an eyedropper once you leave the box. So yeah, that would be great if I could sample the color that's already there and it would just magically make it that color. Maybe we'll get that one day. Unless you're thinking of some other eyedropper that I'm not thinking of. All right, next up. Yep, someone asked the same question. So now let's go ahead and move on. Again, which eyedropper are you referring to? If you're referring to an eyedropper I'm not thinking of, let me know what it is. All right, so next up, let's go into next photo. And this photo I've always, like this one's always challenged me because she's wearing glasses and they're clear, but because of the flash, it kind of put like a white haze in the photo, or I'm sorry, in the lenses. And so I was playing around with this and I've shown this photo before where I used dehaze to kind of tone down some of that white. But then I stumbled on another cooler thing to do with the glasses, basically turning them into sunglasses. So let's do that. Let's, first of all, again, if I want to just get the lens part, I would have to, I'd have to painstakingly go in and brush out or brush all the lenses on both sides and get it perfect. But now with the new selection methods, we have object selections, and I can either try using the rectangle to try and make a rectangular selection around the whole thing. But what I'm afraid of is it's going to detect the outer rim of the glass as well. Or I can use the brush, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab the brush and just start brushing in. And again, I'm not being perfect. I'm just giving Lightroom an idea of what I want. So I'm just brushing in the glass there. Now, when I let go, because I have to let go to get to the other lens, it's going to go ahead and make the selection. There, boom, it made the mask. And if I can't go to brush the other side now because it thinks you're done, you let go, your mask must be complete. That's okay. Go to your mask and add to it and add another object selection. So now you're adding to that same mask for the other lens. And again, not being perfect because the object selection tool doesn't need to be perfect. It will guess, and it guessed really good. Now, I see one more area in that first lens down near the nose that kind of didn't get as much as I want. So we'll add one more time. Objects. And we'll just get that one little piece right there. And there it is. Okay, so great. And oh, I see there was a little nose bridge there that it was kind of like getting confused with. So great, got my lenses selected. So much easier than having to brush it perfectly than like we had to do before. All right, next up. Bobby's saying, yeah, I saw the eyedropper inside the box, but didn't know it disappeared once you leave the box. Yeah, that's the problem with it. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and, so what I was doing before for this particular one is I would go to dehaze and I'll just add just a little bit of dehaze to kind of bring down the white. Now, you can't go too far because if you go too far, you start affecting her eyes. Now, you could, if you really wanted to use dehaze and make these lenses clear, what I would recommend is go back to the mask, hit subtract, and paint out the eyes. And I can still do that. I can like go here and paint the eyes out, and that way the eyes won't be affected by the dehaze, but everything else would be. And that would kind of work. But then I was like, well, okay, I'll just pull back a little. I just won't make it so dehazed. And then I started playing around with other things. So for example, I started playing around with exposure. And I was like, ooh, we can turn these into sunglasses pretty quickly, pretty easily, just like that. And I was like, done. She wasn't wearing sunglasses before, but the fact that these can be sunglasses make them look better than white glasses. And that was my whole thing. So I started playing around with the sliders. I was like, wait a minute. We can really have some fun, and then you can blow them out that way as well. But we have some fun with this. We're going to turn them into shades. And now that looks much cooler, much better than just the white lenses. Now, I haven't tried this yet, but you might want to go in, back to color. And the eyedropper, yeah, is only for this area. And you can make them a specific color that you want. So if you want red lenses to kind of match, her lipstick or whatever, or green lenses or whatever. So you can not only turn the glasses into shades, but you can turn them into the kind of lens colors that you want to kind of do something cool that way. So very stylistic, very fashionable, very cool. I love the frames, but I always hated that white glare that she got from my flash. And this way I get to control it and make it whatever I want. So again, just something that would have taken a lot longer before without the object selection, because you would have had to carefully paint everything in perfectly and then start making your adjustments. But some cool adjustments to try the next time you run into a glass issue. Cool, glad you liked that one. All right, next up, let's try a different one here. Now, I'm gonna go back to the original photo that I first started doing portrait retouching on. This is the first one. Now, this photo, I retouched a version of it in Photoshop when I first took it years ago, and the photo came out great. And then when Lightroom started getting more features, I said, oh, let me see if I can get close to that retouch that I did in Lightroom or in Photoshop in Lightroom. And so this was my test case. So every time Lightroom gets new features, I go back to this original photo and keep tweaking to see if I can get a better photo now with Lightroom. So this is one more time. This is like the third or fourth time I've used this photo for portrait retouching in Lightroom, because we get new features every time and I try new things. All right, so let's go ahead and try this one now. So this one needs a lot of things. So let's first and foremost go back to the regular Develop settings, and let's switch it to a camera raw profile that I want. The white balance is off because she's too, like the whole picture is too yellow. So I'm going to go to my white balance eyedropper, and I'm going to go ahead and just sample the microphone, which is silver, kind of a nice neutral gray. So that's bringing in some of that color the way it's supposed to. Let's hit auto on the auto tone, kind of just adjusting the overall photo. Obviously, there's something like a piece of softbox or something up there that needs to be cropped out. And maybe we don't crop it out anymore. That's another thing. So before, I would have to crop that out because trying to patch it or remove it was just too painful. It just took too long. But now that we have the new eraser tool, let me go see it. And again, I don't care about cropping it. Like, I'm okay with that. But let's see what I would get if I were to just try and paint it out. Now that it's going to use content aware, and, ooh, I missed a spot there, but not too bad. Yeah, see, it's starting to just blend in with the edge, so. But you know what? I might be able to fix that. Let's undo those last two, and let's go ahead and do one more stroke there. And this time, we're going to set that one to, because you don't have to use the eraser. You can go back and use the other ones that you used to use. So you can use the clone stamp. And we can say, yep, just use the clone stamp of that area for that one little piece that was being stubborn. Go back to the old method for that one little part. And there we are. All right, so we turn that tool off. Yeah, I would need to come all the way across because now the lighting's different. So it's just, is this worth saving? And the answer is no. So I'm going to undo this. I'll go back to my normal method of hitting crop and just bringing this down a little bit. There we go. Now I don't have to deal with any of the lighting, any of the shadowing. I don't have to like fix it and get it perfect. Spending too much time on something that's not important is what I'm trying to say. All right, so next up, next thing that always bugged me about this photo is this yellow band around the microphone. I gave her one of my microphones to hold, and this one had some yellow tape on it. And so I was always trying different methods to get rid of that tape. I was using the clone stamp and cloning the other part of the microphone that didn't have the tape, and that usually worked out pretty well. I have not tried it with the new eraser, so let's try it with the eraser now. And let's go ahead and zoom in. And let's see what this does. Make my brush a little smaller, just using my left bracket key there. And again, it may try and pick up part of her hand because it's using the same spot healing technology, content aware that Photoshop uses now. So it may try and pick up part of her hand since her hand's close to it. But let's see what we get. And if not, we can always use the method that worked before. Yeah, see, that's what I figured it would do. So instead, let's use clone stamp. And we'll just use that. Pull it down, kind of get it just right. And I don't know why it's still giving me the yellow spots. Let's undo that. And let's go back. Let's start off with clone stamp instead. Because I'm pretty sure I got it all. Now, in Photoshop, I just use the patch tool and be done with it. But again, we're trying to see how much we can get away with in Lightroom. There we go. So that's the method that I used before. And the main thing is making sure it's all lined up properly. And we end up with something like that. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, there's a little bit of edge there I need to go back and fix. So let's go back and fix that edge. Oh God, hold on. That's awful. Hold on. Let's get that selected. Let's see, what are we using here? Let's use the healing. There we go. And need to tweak that a little bit more, but you get the idea. It can be done. I just need to spend a few more minutes tweaking that line to get it just right. But I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time on that because we've got so much more to do. But that's gone enough to not notice it. And especially if I could just get rid of that one little white spot, we'd be good. You know what? Here, let's go back in. That one little white spot's going to bug me. Hold on. Oh, I'm just making it worse. All right, tell you what. Let's do this. All right, the white's gone. Still not lined up just right, but at least now it's not a distraction. It's a distraction. But I'm going to move on. That's the worst I've ever done. Like, I usually get rid of that tape in like 2 seconds. All right, but anyway, moving on. Next up, and the tape is gone. It's just that one little white spot's going to bug me, but we're going to move on. All right, let's move on to the facial features here. And again, I was having to brush all of this manually and remove all these things manually, or like when I say remove, like she's got a pimple here and a pimple there. Just kind of like quickly removing those 2 or 3 pimples. But what I had to do with the eyes was I had to manually brush them in to brighten them up. Well, now that we have people masking, and by the way, the microphone thing, I wouldn't fight that. Like, if it was giving me that much trouble trying to do it in the Lightroom, I got a better tool for that. I just head over to Photoshop and get rid of it. This was just an experiment of how much we could get rid of or do in Lightroom Classic. So if I was having to do this for real, I wouldn't have wasted any more time. I would have undid the whole thing, went into Photoshop, and just removed that yellow band in 2 seconds with the patch tool. So just keep that in mind, that there's no reason to fight it. If one tool's not doing a good job, head over to Photoshop where you can do a better job. All right, so let's move on. And this whole thing is just an experiment anyway. So let's move to the person. So we have her eye sclera, which is the white part of her eyes. We have her iris and pupil. So it's automatically identifying these areas. Face skin. So I'm going to go to the eye sclera just for a second here, and let's create a mask of that. So now that I created that mask, I'm just going to go ahead and just slightly brighten them up a little bit. And again, you don't want to go too far. You don't want to turn the person into a ghost. It's ever so subtle, because where you really need to check it when you're done is you need to zoom out. Yeah, the mic is still bugging me, Daniel. It's going to bug me because I just like that would irritate me, and I would have to go into Photoshop and fix it and just be done with it. Anyway, moving on. So just ever so slightly, because too much is too much. You'll be able to notice it, and it will look distracting in and of itself if you make the eyes too bright. So just a slight amount of brightness. And what you can also do to kind of reduce some of the redness is you could just reduce the saturation. So that redness, the lines of the blood vessels don't go away, but they're not as red when you reduce the saturation. So then if you just reduce the saturation, you might not need to go as bright on the exposure. All right, so quickly, easily done that way. Next up, let's create another mask. This time, because eyes are important, let's go back to the people, and let's go in here and get an iris and pupil mask. And each one of these masks is going to stay there, so you can name them so you know which one's which. So this is sclera. I don't know how to spell sclera. There it is. SC. There we go. And this one is going to be pupil. Great. All right, so now we've got the pupil in there. What I would do here is, you could change the color of the eyes if you wanted to, but I'm not here to change the color. What I am here to do is make sure the eyes are nice and sharp. So what I would probably go in here and do is adjust the sharpness. Now again, don't go, see, that's all the way down so you can see them get blurry. That's all the way up so you can see them start to get destroyed, because that's too much sharpness. So maybe just tone it down somewhere like in the middle between no sharpness and all the way up. The other thing you can do is you could try texture and clarity to kind of sharpen the eyes as well. And now if you do clarity, it is going to adjust the midtone or shadows and highlights as well. So I don't usually want to adjust clarity in this case, because I want the I want to preserve my shadows and highlights, and maybe not so much texture. And of course, you can always zoom in. Once we're off this mask, you can always zoom in and see what you're doing. Now, if I did too much, like I'm starting to see some degradation there, I can always go back to that mask for the pupil. Because it's non-destructive, I can always bring it back down. So if I thought that was too much, or I wanted to see what it was doing, I could adjust it. And if I thought the sharpness was too much, maybe right around there, that'd be good. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Let's go ahead and zoom out. So again, this is where we were. This is where we are now. So just those few subtle changes, including a microphone that needs to go back to Photoshop and get some real work done on it. Those few changes, we're good to go. Now, we're just going to, again, go back in and reduce some of those pimples that I mentioned earlier, which are easy now. No longer do I have to rely on the clone and the healing to try and pick another area close by. If I just use the eraser, it will literally use the pixels surrounding it just like it does in Photoshop. So I can quickly get rid of these few little, like 5 or 6 pimples she has that were gone like the next week. And away we go. All right, so turn that off and the pimples are gone. So this makes life so much easier for portrait retouching, especially for doing simple things that are quick and easy here in Lightroom. Now, the next thing I might do is, because the eye sockets themselves are darker, so I might adjust them slightly, and that will require a brush because there's no specific thing that I want to select. I could try it with the object selection tool, but chances are it's not going to select enough, but we can give it a shot. So let's go into masking. Let's go into new mask, and let's use objects this time. And I'm going to go, oh, well, let's try the rectangle. I'm just going to see if I can see how much of this it will get. That's close. That's not bad. So what I could do there, I would probably adjust a little bit more area, so I might grab the brush and paint out a little bit. But yeah, see, we can only go just a little bit, because you go too much, you can tell. So just a little bit brighter. So again, I would probably not use the object selection because it's too hard of a selection, or too hard-edged of a selection, I should say. And instead, let's go ahead and create a new mask just with the brush. So we're going to go back to the old-fashioned method of doing this. And this way I can brush in as much as I want of this area. And I can keep brushing. I don't have to add another area. So I can get both eyes at the same time, so they're exactly the same. And now that I got that area brushed in, I can then go and play with exposure, and maybe even just like literally almost nothing. And then maybe the highlights or the shadows probably. Let's go shadows. So, because yeah, I don't want to introduce white. I don't want to make her skin look white because I did this. So you can only get away with so much. Now, if that doesn't work, like if that's not working for me because it's going to be too noticeable, so then what I might do is say, well, forget this. Turn that mask off for a second. So this is the before and after. Oh, wait, hang on, there we go. Before, after, subtle change. Let's go back and turn the pupil back on. Subtle change, not horrible, but not awesome. So what I might do instead is I might go in and I might just do under the eye. No, you know what? I want to show you something, but I got a better photo to show it to you on. So in this case, I'm going to stick with this. And keep in mind, you can always go into your mask. If you don't like where it's doing in a specific area, you can hit subtract. And I could say, you know what? I don't like that it's adding too much white in a certain area. So I can brush it away and turn it off in that area. So if I thought it was getting too white under the eyes, I could turn it off so it just does the top part of the eye. Let's make that brush a little bit bigger. Yeah, this is a tricky one because again, I want to reduce that shadow, but I don't want to make it look obvious that I did it. So I could try other methods of selecting and other methods of adjusting, but again, easy in Photoshop, not as easy here. Now I could just simply try and remove it. Let's try that. So we're using the eraser. And the eraser created like a line, but the eraser has an opacity setting. So I can adjust it so it's not as hard edge of a line. Let's go here. Nope, creating a line. Yeah, her eyes are just, that shadow is just difficult to remove in Lightroom. So again, another example of this would be much easier and faster to do in Photoshop. All right, so let's take a quick look out, because again, most people aren't going to be zoomed in on your photo looking at it that way. So again, if we do before, after, I think my after looks better. So that's before. See the darkness around the eyes, and then the after. The pupils, the eye sclera looks better. I still see this hard line that's bugging me, but again, I'm reluctant to try and do any more with it here. So let's say that I want to get rid of this mask. Delete. Delete. And again, I don't know that I'm doing any better here with this one. Let's get out of it. So before, after, so I got rid of my adjustment under the eye, and it looks pretty much the same. So I wasn't doing that much anyway to begin with. Now, last but not least, and this is the way I did it before, I went in and I used the old-fashioned method of cloning, actually healing. This is the one that picks an area, another area of the photo that you can adjust. So nope, I don't want it up there. I want it down there. And that actually does a much better job because you're dictating where it's pulling the pixels from. So that's why these older methods are still here, because they're still useful. Nope, don't want her hair. I want it down here. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, see that's going to be the better job. If I zoom out and we do the before and after. And I also want to check the opacity of those to make sure the opacity is up on those. Yeah, the opacity is down. Let's try the opacity up. Opacity up. Now let's take a look. And again, before, after, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. Just subtly reducing that shadow under the eyes that was caused by the lighting. All right, next up, and this is another quick one that we can do on this photo, and then we're gonna move on to our next one. We're gonna go back to the masking one more time, and we're gonna add one more mask. And we're gonna add, because we can now, and people are always asking for this. I don't always do this on every photo, but because people ask, I'll go ahead and do it. Let's add another people mask, and we're gonna create one more, and we're gonna do people, her, and we're gonna do face skin. Now, what is face skin? Face skin is everything except the lips, the eyes, the eyebrows, the jewelry, and it's just the skin. So what people will use a mask like this for is if they want to do skin smoothing. Again, I don't always do this on every photo. I probably don't do it very often because the subjects I shoot are usually young. They don't need it, and most people don't want like the Vaseline, and then we can go in. Moving on. Okay. Look at, oh, hold on, went too far and after. So if you ever wondered how to do that, move on to our next photo. I'm going to go in and take a look at, I was going to show you a photo with an example that I wanted to show, and it is, where's Justina? It's this one. All right. So again, when the lighting isn't flattering under the eyes, you create these lines that really are not fair to the person, because it's a lot of times just the angle of the light creating more shadow than there really is. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go in and I'm going to show you the method that I was going to show you, because in Photoshop, I would use the patch tool, get rid of it all, and then I would show you the slider for the patch tool to bring half of it back in, or bring enough of it back in to where it doesn't look unnatural. So we don't have that in Photoshop, but we have a way to, we don't have that in Lightroom. We have a way to do it though, to get that same effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab the eraser. And I kind of hinted at this already, but let's say we erase all of it. And maybe the eraser is not going to be my best friend in this case because it's too close to her eye. So let's use the other method. So that gets rid of all of it. But that's going to ultimately look too unnatural. So what you have, you don't have a fade, but you do have opacity for each one of these tools. So the eraser, the healing brush, the clone stamp, you have opacity. So with opacity, you can lower the opacity to kind of bring some of it back in, because it would look just weird if it were completely gone. But this way you get some of it back to bring back that natural look, that's the way a person's eye would normally look. So same thing here. If I do the same thing over here and get rid of all of it, and it's just crazy the way this thing picks different spots, and say I want to use that part under the eye. So the opacity is already down. So the opacity is sticky, by the way. So it will remember what the opacity was last. So that's all of it gone. That's all of it back. You can dial in as much as you want to keep. So that's the trick here. Dial in with opacity as much as you removed it all. You can dial back opacity to keep some of it so that you get as much as you want back. All right. So again, before, after, before, after. And there were some other adjustments done to that photo as well. So one of which should be the white balance. There we go. So now let's look at before, after. There we go. All right. Next up, changing the color of things is so much easier in Lightroom now. You saw me do it with the lips, but you can also do it with clothing or fabric or whatever. So let's go ahead and try that. Let's go back down here. And now the tricky part here is that her hair is touching her blouse. Her hand is touching her blouse. So what we're going to try is we're going to try an object selection to see what we can mask. So let's go ahead into develop. Let's hit the masking. And let's hit the objects and use the rectangle. And I'm just going to start out here and select across and see what it does. And it's red, it's a red mask, but it pretty much got it from what I could tell. So if I just go in and adjust the hue, now see it's starting to cast a little bit on her skin. So what I might do in that case, what I would do, and there's no might about it, I would go subtract, grab a brush, and just brush away her skin. So her skin's not being affected by that mask. Oop, too small. There we go. Her skin should not be turning colors, just the blouse. So in that case, if the mask isn't perfect, you can always go in and make adjustments. So now I'm free to do whatever I want. So if I want to go in and change the color, I can change the color to whatever I want. Keep it in mind that we just made that quick selection with the object selection tool. Now before, you would have done a brush and you would have had to painstakingly brush between the fingers and do all of that. With the object selection tool, it's pretty darn accurate in guessing what you're trying to do. Now there's one more mask you could have done if you didn't have the object selection tool. You could have gone in and I'm not going to do it, but you create a mask and you create a mask based on color range. Now color range will let you pick a range of colors that you're looking for. So in this case, I'd be looking for the red. But keep in mind, her lipstick's red too. So you'd probably be changing her dress and her lips unless you subtract and brush away the lips. So that way it would only adjust the blouse. All right. Next up, let's keep going. And now let's go to this one. All right. This one, we're going to do a few things. So first of all, this one's unedited as far as I think I reset this one back. So let's go ahead and do camera portrait or portrait. Let's do auto tone. Let's do our white balance. Let's do, I'm going to bring down, it always adjusts the vibrance and saturation when I do auto. I usually don't want those. I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit more. And I'm going to bring down the saturation just a little bit to kind of bring her skin tone back to where it should be. Maybe something like that. Okay, we're getting there. Now, we all have laugh lines, or most of us have these laugh lines and a few little pimples there. So same kind of thing we've been doing before. Now that we have the eraser, we can do that painstakingly just with a brush. I should say painlessly, not painstakingly. And again, we can brush away these pimples, brush away that laugh line, brush away that little indentation. Now she's got like a birthmark here, a beauty mark. You know, it's her identity. I would normally keep it, but just if you needed to, you can just click and it would be gone. So again, I'll leave that to you. Let's go ahead and come down here. Same thing, little moles, little pimples, and away we go. All right. So, pupils. Let's go ahead and get our pupils in. Detecting people. Select pupil. Iris and pupil, there it is. Create mask. And let's go ahead and add some sharpening to that. And again, we can zoom in so we can see the sharpness that we're adding. Too much, too little, somewhere in between. Maybe something like that. Maybe a little more texture. One more thing, let's add a new mask. People, her, eye sclera, create mask. And we're going to come down and reduce the saturation. And again, if you're going to do exposure, it's got to be very subtle. Too much, too little. Just a slight, subtle change. Because it makes all the difference in the world when you're zoomed out. It just looks bad if you go too far. In other words, you don't want to give them headlights. Now, there's this one little white part of her shirt or bra, whatever this is, sticking out here. Now, again, in Photoshop, that'd be a pretty quick, easy thing to remove. But here in Lightroom, that may be trickier. We can try it with the eraser. Let's give it a shot. I may or may not like the result. Oh, wrong. Oh, that was it. Opacity. There we go. Yeah, see, again, it's because it's picking up from that, from the gray and from the black. So I don't want an indentation there. So instead, we might clone stamp it and just pick up another piece of skin. There we go. And now that we got that there, could go in and go over, oh, too close. Hang on, I got too close to the edge. There we go. Little subtle thing there, but it can be done. All right. Now, the next thing we would do is, I don't like to see like this background like showing some wrinkles in the backdrop there. So we can go to masking. We can create a new mask. And this time we're just going to select background, which is a nice, easy thing to select now. And now that the background's been selected, I'm just going to defocus that, that area. So I'm going to remove the texture in it. I remove the clarity in it. And kind of dial it down as much as I can. Now, if I dehaze it too much, it's going to make it brighter. But I could dehaze it. Let's try this. And drop the exposure. Yeah, it's going to kind of give me a little bit of both. Now, I could add another mask and keep doing that. Let's try that again. Create another mask, select background. And let's try it one more time. So doubling up on the mask. Let's do texture again. And clarity again. And I keep doubling and tripling up until I get rid of as much of it as I need to. In this case, I might also brush it in. So like, in other words, I got as much of the background as I'm going to get, where I'm starting to also affect her crown because it's not doing a good enough job selecting. So I would probably subtract from one of those masks or both of those masks and maybe brush away the part that I don't want it to affect, like up here. So we want to bring back the clarity in her hair and the crown by just unmasking this part. So I have to do that for both backgrounds. I can't tell if I did it for that one already. There's one. Oh, yep, I already did it for that one. We need mask 3, that one. Subtract, brush. There we go. Too much on that one side. Let's go here. Just to bring back that crown from that selection. All right. I can keep tweaking, but I think you got it. There was one more I was going to do here, this one. So this one doesn't need a ton, but the thing I'm like kind of seeing mostly on this one is that the body skin could stand a little bit of softening to kind of remove some of the acne or just spots here. So let's, hang on, zoom out. Oh, hold on, undo. And go here. So just this acne area here. So again, I could go in spot by spot and just remove a few of these. It's like maybe 7 of them that need to go. Or this would be a good opportunity to use the body skin option because it will detect all the body skin, not the face. Create a mask. And again, just simply lower the texture and potentially the clarity. Not too much. Just enough to kind of soften that area. Now again, you could always go back in, and if there are just a couple of marks that you need to remove, we all have them. Just using the new eraser, quickly and easily you can do this. So that's about the same amount of speed it would take me to do it inside of Photoshop, but I'm doing it here in Lightroom and I can always come back and readjust. There we go, great. So same thing there. If you wanted to, so this is our before, our after, just softening that area of skin. And again, we want to remove the laugh lines here, we could, but everything else looks great. All right, I am pretty much out of time, folks. So hopefully you got some cool things out of this. One more thing. Hold on. One more thing I didn't show real quick before I get cut off. I talked about this earlier, but I didn't show it here. Create a mask with a brush. The brush can have presets. So I mentioned this earlier. So I've got all these presets for lips, different colors, skin, different effects. And this is the thing that separates Lightroom Classic from Lightroom. That's the only thing that would be different from you doing it in Lightroom, everything I just showed you. All right, folks, that's my time. Hope you have a great rest of your day and rest of your weekend. Stay tuned for the Daily Creative Challenge. And I got to go fix a microphone. No, just kidding. I'm not going to. I've already done that photo in Photoshop, so I don't need to do it. But yeah, that microphone would still bug me, and I'd still go back to Photoshop and fix that one thing. Otherwise, we're good. Cheers, everybody. Stay tuned for the Daily Creative Challenge. Bye.